All right, guys. If the group moderators don't choose to share this video on their own accord in their C8 Z06 groups, they do not care about you guys' well-being. This is a big one. This is something that does affect everybody. I mean, everybody. So listen to me very carefully, because I've uncovered perhaps the most important magic trick of all that I realized exists now with this whole thing, with this whole C8 Z06 situation, and potentially even the Stingray. I don't have enough experience with the Stingrays to know if this happens or not, but here we go. Everything I'm going to give you is facts, okay? So let me show you here so you don't think I'm bullshitting you. Give me a second. Let me find the paperwork. What I do with the paperwork. So I just paid $240 out of pocket to have the crank sensor relearn, crank position sensor relearn. So there you can see. And the reason why I had to pay that out of pocket is because my car is no longer under bumper to bumper warranty. Now, the crank sensor is in the engine. Hypothetically, if an engine blows due to the crank sensor relearn process not being completed, it is my belief, and I'm 99% sure that I'm right on this, General Motors is not going to cover your engine under warranty. So all these people in the group saying, oh, just clear your codes, everything will be fine. I talked to the Chevy tech, the Vette tech about this, and I said, let me ask you a question. If I would have just cleared the code and not had the crank sensor, position sensor relearned, is the car in a state of chaos per se? Like, does it know where it doesn't know where the crank shaft is, correct? So how does it know what advanced or retarded timing is, correct? He's like, exactly. You got to perform this procedure to relearn where it's at. And I said, so hypothetically, if you don't get that procedure redone to relearn the where the crank shaft is at, what are the odds that the engine would experience detonation? He's like, well, GM has it into full retard position on the crankshaft. However, you're right. They don't know where it's at. That's why you have to relearn where it's at. Right. So, first thing I'll tell you is this. I had enough common sense that I was not going wide open throttle. I wasn't even going wide open throttle when the code set. And that's another key, which we'll get to in a second. But first I want to stay on point, the part that you guys all care about, that you guys should all care about if you care at all about your pocketbook. Because these engines are like 30 grand. So, in my opinion, General Motors has devised a very devious magic trick where they know that from time to time there are going to be U codes thrown in these cars, and U codes have to do with global B and the modules falling out of communication with each other. When those U codes occur, okay, like in this situation, we had U code sorry, I'm driving right now. It's not the safest time for me to be reading for codes. Anyway, the position sensor code was p0315. I know that much. The U code, I forget what it was, but it was in one of my previous videos. I showed the codes. The U code causes the ECU to leave the chat, and or it causes the TCU to leave the chat. Notice I said and or, so it can cause both of those to leave the chat. So that alone can cost you your life. Forget pocketbook, okay? Unless you want to talk about emergency room bills. When the TCU leaves the chat, TCM, whatever you want to call it, transmission control module, transmission control unit, when it leaves the chat due to a miscommunication within global B, because there's a voltage spike that occurs when there's miscommunications. There's voltage spikes when your battery's going bad. There's voltage spikes up and down when your alternator's going bad. There's voltage spikes when your battery's loose. There's voltage spikes when mice chew wires. But now New and improved with the C8 Corvette, never before in Corvette history. There's when the U codes also occur, the spikes occur when Global B is just having a bad day. When you have a glitch, when your Google infotainment system glitches, like my friend who just had his car bought back on Lemon because his Google infotainment was glitching and causing the eDiff to glitch, the TCM to check out, the eDiff to go to zero. When these glitches happen, anytime the ECM, the engine control unit, and the engine control module leaves the chat, there's high likelihood that your crankshaft position sensor will need to be relearned. And if you do not do that, your engine will likely not be covered under the powertrain warranty. It may not even be covered under the bumper-to-bumper warranty if you drive for an extended period of time and don't do that. So now let's go to the next caveat to this whole thing. When you're out of bumper-to-bumper warranty, but you're still in the powertrain warranty, let's say that hypothetically last night, I would have been going, or the person driving the car would have been going full throttle. Then there would have been great odds of there being detonation when the crank position sensor doesn't know where it's at anymore, okay? Great odds of detonation on an engine that's this precise with this much compression. So at that point, if General Motors isn't willing to pay the bill to have the thing relearned, do you honestly think they're gonna pay the bill when an electronic glitch causes your engine to blow? Do you think they're gonna cover the bill on your engine? I think the answer is probably no to that as well. I'm not 99% sure like I was in the other one, but I'll still say it's greater than 50% that General Motors is going to attempt to say to you, this was an electrical issue, you're out of electrical warranty, the electronics caused the engine to fail, it was not an engine failure, it was an electronic command failure. This is not our problem. This is not an engine issue. This was an electronic issue. You're paying for the new engine. Couple this with the fact that in the groups, there's a gentleman who's been saying that General Motors asked him to pay for his motor in full recently. Could it be that this situation occurred with his brand new car, where he had one of these codes throw and he simply cleared the code instead of went and got the engine crank position sensor relearned? How often does this happen, you might ask? I've had it happen twice at random, minimum. Once I was driving north from South Carolina back up to Ohio. It was cold outside. I was in South Carolina, Augusta, Georgia area, and a couple hundred feet above sea level. The car experienced detonation under wide open throttle in the cold weather. You say, Brandon, that's never going to be me. Okay, fine. You're never going to go wide open throttle at sea level in cold weather. So be it. Last night, this car was not under wide open throttle because the driver was not driving the car at wide open throttle because the car needs new brakes soon. So we're not trying to get down to metal on metal anytime soon. We're just trying to kind of baby it till we get the brakes done, because I'm on a big road trip from Ohio to South Carolina to Florida and so on and so forth. And so we're just taking it easy. We still have plenty of brake pad left, but we're not trying to aggravate it and melt the brake pads through the mountain roads like we're running Tail of the Dragon at max speed. So instead, last night, the driver of this vehicle seemed to have just been doing like Miata style, carrying their speed, okay? And meaning they're not getting hard on the brakes at all. They're not even touching the brakes. They were downshifting before every turn to slow the car down. And they were just getting light back on the throttle because they knew they didn't want to have to stop the car with the brakes next turn. And they were on a windy road. Understand something. If the U codes throw and the ECU leaves the chat and you're not at wide open throttle and you're just idling, you're not going to experience detonation more than likely. Everything's going to be fine. Even at half throttle, you're probably going to be okay. It's when you get to wide open throttle that you're going to experience the problem. Had the driver last night been at wide open throttle anywhere on that mountain road with a 300-foot, 200-foot cliff on one side, okay, for roughly a mile stretch, which is coincidentally exactly where that code threw. So think about this for a second. But let me finish that sentence. The engine could have blown, oil could have gone over the back tires, and he could have spun off the road or into the oncoming traffic lane and been killed. Now, the whole premise behind why General Motors had to go to Global B is because they're saying that with autonomous vehicles, which are coming soon, they need to be able to make sure that hackers are not able to get into the system, because if the car is taken over by hackers, hackers could kill you. Understand something. If hackers know that Global B having any kind of a malfunction, any kind of a miscommunication error, if the hackers find out that all they have to do is have one wire become clipped to have the car lose communication and start throwing these U codes and have the ECM and the TCM leave the chat, ECU, TCM, and they do that to you while you're at a high-speed curve, and they can somehow time it, it's roughly 700 miles between Ohio and South Carolina to Hilton Head. Think about this amazing coincidence, guys. The guy who's causing General Motors the most grief right now, who can prove this whole thing, that it's a bad situation for us, the consumers, it's an unsafe situation. That guy, while he's on his favorite road where he likes to go quickly, his vehicle, while he was either in the driver's seat or the passenger seat, his vehicle was traveling on a road with a cliff on one side, and he usually goes wide open throttle between the turns, and the car coincidentally had a U code throw, Global B miscommunication, which caused the ECM, ECU to leave the chat, which caused p0315 crankcase position needed to be relearned. Had he been going wide open throttle, it could have blown the motor right there. And on a 700-mile trip, it coincidentally tripped on the mile where there's a cliff on one side. That's a great coincidence, Mark Royce. That is a fantastic coincidence. I look forward to the jury hearing that one. That is amazing. I really like those videos that you guys used to put out about how you could take terrorists out by taking control of their Escalade or their Suburban and running them off a cliff. No correlation, of course. So basically, again, that we'll say is speculative. That's fine, speculative. The point is, guys, loose batteries, dying batteries, bad alternators, chewed mouse wires can cause your ECM, ECU to leave the chat when the voltage swings occur. Luckily, I don't have those things. I've only had a couple of these things happen, but imagine if you had a bad ground somewhere. It costs $240 to get it done, to get it relearned. It takes 10 minutes. Half an hour tops. The dealers don't want to do it. I had to twist the dealer's arm to ditch other people in line to get me done, because I told them I wasn't going to be in town anymore. I'm leaving town, which is the truth. I had to go to 3 dealers till I finally got my dealer I have a long-term relationship with to say yes. The dealership where I had my car sitting in their shop for a year, the C7. They said yes, they did it. $240.73. If I hadn't have done that, or if the engine would have failed on the way from the check engine light to the dealership, General Motors could have denied the claim on my motor. They could have said that's an electrical issue. You should have had the car towed to the dealership immediately. You chose to drive on a check engine light. You didn't pay the tow bill. You didn't get your crankcase or crankshaft position relearned in time. That motor blow is on you, Brandon. You owe us $30,000 if you want that car to ever run again. Something else, guys. If and when war is declared with China, which everybody said it's coming in 2027, China's already said it's coming, everybody's saying it's coming. That's less than 2 years away now. Do you guys know something interesting about lemon law? It doesn't apply during times of war. You cannot file lemon. That means manufacturers are not obligated to fix your car in a timely manner. That means that manufacturers are not obligated to adhere to warranty at all. Isn't it amazingly coincidental that this vehicle coming into a quote-unquote world war exists, and that all these plethoras of magic tricks exist to where General Motors is going to stick you with the bill on this car? Do not own this car out of warranty. Make sure you get an aftermarket warranty, and don't be surprised when your aftermarket warranty companies don't even want to cover this car anymore once they finally understand all the magic tricks that General Motors has up their sleeve. I haven't even touched on 20% of them in this video, but that's a long enough video. That was 15 minutes. We'll see how many Facebook group moderators and forum boss moderators, Corvette Forum, Mid-Engine Corvette Forum, all the C8 owners groups, all the C8 owners groups, C8 Z06 owners groups, all of these groups. We'll see how many of those bosses reshare this video. There was no cussing. There's nothing to be angry about. This was a polite video that explained nothing but facts. There's the facts. Have a good one.